You look like someone who'd be interested in a bargain.
A bargain?
Yeah.
Sure, why? Are you a salesman?
Right.
Oh. What do you sell?
Eights.
Eights, like the number eight. Shh. Like the number eight.
Right.
That's kind of a weird thing to sell.
Listen, you take this 80 here, you see. It's very useful. You buy it. You hang it on the wall.
Well, why should I buy an eight and hang it on the wall?
Next time you wonder how many legs an octopus has, you look at the 8.
Octopus has 8 legs.
Shh.
The octopus has 8 legs.
Right. Oh, when you forget how many reindeer Santa Claus has, dig the 8.
8 reindeer. Shh. 8 reindeer.
Right. But when you can't remember what time you eat breakfast in the morning, you ready?
Ah, I ate breakfast at 8. Shh. I ate breakfast at 8. No, I can't. I don't have any money. See, just a couple of minutes ago, I met this guy selling 9s, you see. I bought his whole selection. So I was wondering, could I interest you in buying a 9? Because you could put it on the wall, you see, and see how many players there are on a baseball team, you know. You can also find out what day of the month the 9th of August comes in. How about that? Hey, listen, how about I'll trade you all my 9s for your 8s. How about that, huh? I'll even throw in a 4 or 2, huh? I'll throw in a 2 and a 4. And 2 3s, huh?
Yeah.
Three rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die.
One ring to find them, and the darkness
To bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, then with shadows lie.
one ring the land of gold. One ring frees for the elven kings under the sky's sky.
7
Seven
dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die. 1 for the darkness road in the land where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, then the shadows lie.
I'm fucking gonna throw it away. Get the fuck out of here.
It's a question many have asked. plausible sequence of events. So today on Nerd of the Rings, we tackle the question, what if Gandalf took the One Ring? Our story begins in Bag End. Over the years, Gandalf has grown suspicious of Bilbo's ring. After Bilbo leaves, he instructs Frodo not to use it, believing it may be a ring of power. As Aragorn hunts for Gollum, Gandalf makes his way to Minas Tirith, where he finds the scroll of Isildur and puts together the pieces of the history of the One Ring. He leaves Minas Tirith, and on his way back to the Shire, he learns from the Elves of Lorien that Aragorn has captured Gollum. Gandalf travels to Mirkwood, where he interrogates Gollum. Seeing the effects that the ring has had on this creature who had once been a hobbit, in addition to how it affected Bilbo over the past decades, Gandalf is now certain the ring Frodo now possesses is in fact the One Ring. Gandalf travels with all haste back to the Shire, arriving on April 12, 3018. In the book, we get a sense of how Gandalf could have come to possess the ring, and what could happen if he did.
No,
Cried Gandalf.
with that power I should have power too great and terrible. Over me the ring would gain a power still greater and more deadly. Do not tempt me. I do not wish to become like the Dark Lord himself. Yet the way of the ring to my heart is by pity. Pity for weakness, the desire of strength to do good. The wish to wield it would be too great for my strength.
Now this is where the true story diverges and our theory takes hold. After confirming Frodo's ring to be the one, Frodo offers it to Gandalf. Rather than refuse, Gandalf, out of his pity for hobbits and desire to do good, agrees to take the One Ring. This would be an all-too-logical thing to do. After all, Sauron has known the names of Shire and Baggins for at least a year by this point. He will surely be coming for the ring and the land of the Shire, and its hobbit inhabitants are ill-prepared and ill-equipped to face any force of the enemy, even with the modest guard of Dunedain around its borders. Not to mention, a hobbit like Frodo, if confronted by a servant of the enemy, would stand little chance of fighting back or escaping. So Gandalf takes possession of the ring and decides to head to Rivendell, the nearest place of strength from which to move. Rather than leave in September as Frodo would, Gandalf leaves on May 1st, the same day he leaves the Shire in the actual story. In the books, it takes Gandalf from September 29th to October 18th to reach Rivendell from Hobbiton. That is less than 3 weeks, which includes being attacked by the Nazgul on Weathertop and taking a long detour north in order to lose the war pursuing them. We can safely assume that with the Nazgul not leaving their dwellings of Minas Morgul and Dol Guldur until June 20th, Gandalf reaches Rivendell with relative ease within the same 3-week period, meaning he arrives in Imladris before the end of May 3018. It's possible and even likely that Gandalf would have Aragorn accompany him to Rivendell, but the other Fellowship members would not be in Rivendell for quite some time, and the hobbits would be left out entirely. Gollum won't escape the elves' captivity until June 20th, so there's yet no reason for Legolas to come to Rivendell. Likewise, Boromir and Gimli would also have not yet left their homes, let alone arrived in Imladris. Now, the Fellowship stayed in Rivendell for roughly 2 months, so for consistency's sake, we'll say Gandalf rests in Rivendell for the same amount of time. Therefore, at some point between the end of May and the end of July, it is left to those who remain to have their own council. Gandalf, Elrond, Glorfindel, Aragorn, and the Elves of Rivendell. Now, I believe Gandalf would still at this point be following his own advice on using the ring. His trip has been relatively easy thus far, so there's been no reason yet for him to use it, or even remove it from his bag or pocket or wherever he stores it. However, as he has possessed the ring for 2 months, it begins to work on him, though he likely does not realize it. Even if it was kept in a vault in Rivendell while they decide what to do, having possessed it for weeks, the ring begins to weigh on Gandalf's thoughts. By this time, the ring has just enough effect on Gandalf to lead him to volunteer to take the ring at the council. The council still decides to destroy the ring, of course, as we learn in the actual book that this is truly the only viable option they have. Now here they would have a choice. Would they go south towards the Gap of Rohan, or would they travel east, crossing the mountains, then turning south to Lorien? Here, I believe they would mimic what occurs in the actual story, going south towards the Gap of Rohan for multiple reasons. First, traveling to Lorien this way would take them close to Mirkwood, and even more concerning, Dol Guldur. While Sauron had been kicked out of Dol Guldur by the White Council decades earlier, We know from my ring wraith video that Sauron still had forces there, led by the Nazgul, Khamul the Easterling. Traveling so near to Sauron's one stronghold outside of Mordor would indeed be taking a huge risk. Second, at this point, the wise would be completely unaware of the treachery of Saruman. Speaking of Saruman, you may wonder, why would Gandalf not immediately go to Saruman like he does in the films to consult the White Wizard? Well, in the books, Gandalf only goes to Isengard after meeting Radagast on the road while wandering Eriador. Since Gandalf has now taken the ring himself, he has no need to seek news in the wild, and therefore would not meet up with Radagast to be told to go to Isengard. This may be a bit of a stretch, but for all we know, Radagast may himself come to Rivendell during this 2-month period, seeking Gandalf. He may even take part in this revised council, informing Gandalf that Saruman wishes to see him, like he does in the book. So this fellowship would believe they had an ally, and a powerful one, awaiting them at Isengard. This alternate fellowship leaves Rivendell around the beginning of August. You know, to avoid any confusion with the actual fellowship, I'm going to call our hypothetical fellowship Gandalf's company, since he's the star of this theory. Gandalf, Aragorn, and a small group of Elrond's elves make up the company. As in the books, I believe Elrond and Glorfindel remain behind. Once again, there's 2 possible approaches here. Do they take the path from the actual story, heading south on foot along the narrow paths beside the mountains, in order to evade spies? Or do they go by roads on which they could take horses? Today, I'm going with the same path as the canon story. Gandalf's company is made of more warriors, but I think they would still err on the side of caution, choosing to evade the spies of Sauron and travel in secrecy. Interestingly, this means they would likely miss Boromir, who at this point is traveling north to find Rivendell. We know Boromir departs Minas Tirith on horseback on July 4th. He makes his way north and through the Gap of Rohan. As he fords the Grey Flood, he loses his horse and must travel the rest of the way on foot. He spends a good chunk of his trip wandering the roads of Eriador, as he doesn't know where exactly Rivendell is located. As he says at the Council of Elrond,
Long have I wandered by roads forgotten, seeking the house of Elrond, of which many have heard, but few know where it lay.
Since Gandalf's company takes the paths near the Misty Mountains, they miss Boromir completely. Now we know it takes the Fellowship a bit over a month to go from Rivendell to Lorien, which includes a failed attempt to cross the Red Moon Pass. So we'll give Gandalf's company a month and a half to make their way to Saruman and Orthanc, arriving in mid-September. Now this is where things get really interesting. Gandalf, having always been cautious around Saruman and feeling the grip of the One Ring, decides to hide its presence. Saruman tells the group he must discuss important matters with Gandalf alone, wizard to wizard as it were. While the rest of the group waits, Gandalf and Saruman make their way into Orthanc, where Saruman builds up to his big reveal, his pitch to Gandalf to join with Sauron. Gandalf refuses. Saruman attacks and begins to take the upper hand in their fight. In his desperation, not truly knowing or being cognizant of what he's doing, Gandalf slips on the One Ring. As the power surges through him, Gandalf fights back, and while defending himself, kills Saruman. With this act, the One Ring strengthens its hold on Gandalf. Having
Craving your next adventure? With Avion, get the flights you want at the points you expect, even at the last minute. Switch to RBC Avion and get up to 55,000 bonus points. Enough?
Gandalf. Having heard the commotion, the rest of Gandalf's company burst into the Tower of Isengard. Gandalf explains Saruman's treachery and his attack on Gandalf while hiding his use of the One Ring. The group, seeking to reassess their path after having lost what they thought would be an ally, rest at Isengard. Here, the change of timeline causes a very interesting circumstance. Again, since we know the journeys of the Ring Wraiths, we know that in September 3018, they've returned to the Wold in Rohan, having unsuccessfully searched the Vales of Anduin for leads on the Shire and for Gollum. At this point, Sauron is aware of Saruman's treachery and tells the Nazgul via messenger to abandon secrecy and make for Isengard. Their arrival date is September 18th, which lines up perfectly with Gandalf's company resting there. The Nine come to Isengard seeking Saruman, but instead they find Gandalf's company. Could a group of elves along with Gandalf and Aragorn withstand the Nine? It's possible. However, as Gandalf has now used the ring and had a couple days to dwell on the power that it brought him, he is unable to resist presented to him. In Unfinished Tales, we hear a very applicable line from Saruman to the Nazgul
I have it not, as surely its servants perceive without telling. For if I had it, then you would bow before me and call me Lord.
With the Nine preparing to lay siege upon Orthanc, Gandalf slips on the ring once again. The ring wraiths are confronted by its new bearer. The Nazgul are now Gandalf's to command. Naturally, Aragorn and the elven companions would be uneasy by this development. Gandalf dismisses their concerns as a one-time occurrence. He assures them he only used the ring this one time, as they could not hope to battle all night while he was still weary from his battle with Sauron. It is just the stroke of luck they need. In the end, Gandalf convinces the group that the ring wraiths cannot be destroyed while Sauron and the ring endure. However, since Gandalf possesses the ring, he can command them, causing havoc in Sauron's forces. Reluctantly, Aragorn and the elves allow Gandalf to send forth the Nazgul. He commands the Witch King to return to Minas Morgul and make preparations for war, with all the orcs under his command. Gandalf's company makes their way southeast to Morgul, arriving at Edoras around a week later. Just as in the books, Theoden and his kingdom have been weakened by the burn and poison of Grima Wormtongue. In similar fashion to the story, Theory Gandalf comes to Edoras and heals the king, and Grima Wormtongue is banished from the realm. In the books, Theoden is much more eager to fight Saruman than in the films. The very same day leads the Rohirrim to take the fight to Saruman. In similar fashion, Theory Theoden is brought up to speed by Gandalf, except in this situation, they are taking the fight to Sauron. Gandalf consults with the king, and it is decided. Theoden will muster the Rohirrim and ride to Minas Tirith. After a rest of about a week in Edoras, Gandalf makes his way south. He tells Aragorn and the elves to assist in the preparations of the Rohirrim and to meet him at Minas Tirith. Making the trip of roughly 350 miles, Gandalf arrives at Minas Tirith in late October 3018. At around the same time, Boromir arrives in Rivendell and holds council with Elrond. The elf, wishing to maintain secrecy of the ring, will only state that a company on an important task has headed south, and Boromir will likely be of best service in his home city. Gandalf is brought to the throne room of Minas Tirith to meet with the steward of the city. Gandalf reveals to Denethor his plan for Rohan and Gondor. Rohan will ride to Minas Tirith, join with the forces of Gondor, and ride to the Black Gate to make war on Sauron himself. Denethor refuses Gandalf's plan. He has received word that the forces of Minas Morgul, which had attacked Osgiliath, have retreated back to the Morgul Vale. Why now should they ride out to face an enemy that has retreated? As in the books, Denethor has used the Palantir to learn the truth about Aragorn and knows he rides with Theoden. He answers Gandalf in the same manner as in the Return of the King. Do I not know thee, Mithrandir? Thy hope is to rule in my stead, to stand behind every throne north, south, or west. So, with the left hand thou wouldst use me for a little while as a shield against Mordor, and with the right bring up this ranger of the north to supplant me. But I say to thee, Gandalf, I will not be thy tool. I am steward of the house of Anarion. I will not step down to be the doted chamberlain of an upstart. Even were his claim proved to me, still, he comes but of the line of his seed. I will not bow to such a one. Last of a ragged house, long dignity. By this time, the ring has a strong hold on Gandalf. He is no longer concerned with the courtesy of halls and the position of men. Enough, answered the wizard. Too long have you sat in the seat of rule. Once more Gondor shall have its king, and by no authority of yours shall he be denied. As Denethor rises from his seat, Gandalf wields the combined power of the Ring of Fire and
down here.
Denethor is consumed by flames
Slow ass
and is
TJs.
no more. With the steward gone, Gandalf seizes control of the city. He orders war preparations to begin immediately. In the books, it takes the Rohirrim 5 days to travel from Dunharrow to Minas Tirith. With less urgency, they arrive in around a week after assembling their forces. After making battle preparations with Aragorn and Theoden, Gandalf leads their combined forces in their march to the Black Gate. They arrive in a coordinated attack. The forces of Minas Morgul attack those of Barad-dûr in the days before. The Nine lead the forces of Morgul against their former master. As the men of the West arrive, they Gandalf calls forth the Dark Lord himself from his tower. Tolkien himself covered this hypothetical scenario in letter 246. One can imagine the scene in which Gandalf, say, was placed in such a position. It would be a delicate balance. On one side, the true allegiance of the ring to Sauron. On the other, superior strength, because Sauron was not actually in possession. Perhaps also because he was weakened by long corruption and expenditure of will in dominating inferiors. Sauron descends from his tower to fight Gandalf face to face.
Fuck, I was fucking them up.
Gandalf, with his two rings, unleashes his full power and is destroyed. At this